Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is Joe Bren. So for today's vlogs, I'll be explaining to you our lesson 1 discussion in the subject of contemporary world. Okay, so this is my new subject for this semester, no? So I hope that you will get something out of this very quick discussion. So to all my students, thank you so much for watching, and to all my non-students, thank you for subscribing and for supporting my channel. Okay, so in this discussion for lesson 1 is you will be able to identify the fundamental philosophers of various concepts of globalization. You will get to know what is globalization, as well as you will try to visualize the idea of globalization. Okay, so this one. So what is really the meaning of globalization? See, so when you talk about globalization, there is a transmission of knowledge, this thing that you are seeing now, the things that we have now, all the things that we are engaging ourselves, and that is the influence of globalization. Globalization is also known as a global market. Okay, so that's why we have a lot of products international. We export products, we do import products. So that's the influence, a perfect example of globalization. So there is this one person who really defined the meaning of globalization. So according to Thomas Larsson, globalization is the process of world shrinkage, distances getting shorter, things moving closer. Okay, so that's the idea of Thomas Larsson. Okay, so I think that that is a good description on how we view globalization, because of globalization we are improving really fast. Because of globalization, things are very fast. We are living now in a very fast-paced environment. That's because of globalization. And I think that's the idea of Thomas Larsson. He tries to know what is really the meaning of globalization. But on the other hand, one person also stated that globalization is the debate, and debate is globalization. So, niingon to si Thomas Larsson, globalization is distances getting shorter, things moving closer. But Cesare Poppi also stated that globalization is debate and debate is globalization. For me, globalization is the idea of being able to express ourselves to one another, being able to share our thoughts to them, being able to embrace the different views of other people, and that is globalization. Okay, so according to World Health Organization, globalization is defined as the increased interconnectedness and interdependence of people and countries. Okay, so therefore, according to World Health Organization, the WHO, globalization is there is an increased interconnectedness and interdependence of people. So therefore, when you talk about globalization, that is, we are so connected with one another. So we are getting influenced by one another. And that is the perception of the World Health Organization when you think about globalization. Okay, so because of globalization, there is opening of borders. We can travel abroad, we can go there, we can visit there, we can buy products there and put it here, we can do business with them, and that is globalization. A perfect example of globalization because of our interdependence and interconnectedness, increased interconnectedness. Okay, so what are the theories that really supported the idea of globalization? Okay, let's try to have it to explain this one by one. The first one is the idea of homogeneity. So when you talk about globalization, the theory of homogeneity really stated that because of globalization, the world become more similar. We are so similar. We are trying to be one, that we are homo, right? So based on our cultural inputs, based on our economic forces and political orientation, we become one as homogeneity supported the idea of globalization. So we become more similar. We do things very similar. We embrace things very similar. We do this because others are also doing it, and because of the influence of globalization. So when you talk about cultural inputs, right? So what is cultural inputs? Number one is we have this cultural imperialism. Because of globalization, we are trying to be influenced by another culture. That is cultural imperialism. It is a given culture influence other culture. If this is my culture, because of the people that surrounds me, because I am trying to observe other people as well, my perception about things has also been changing because of cultural imperialism. The way I behave, the way I do things, the way I perceive things, possibly influenced by globalization. Next is Christianity. Okay, Christianity, it is the most prevailing religion in our country, the Philippines. So, dagandaghan ta, Christianity, it is very prevailing in our country, Philippines. And that is, we become one. We are supported with the theory of homogeneity. Okay? Because daghan-daghan man ang ning simba, nagingana pud sila, so we also do the same thing. We become as one. As one is Americanization. It is the import of non-American products, images, behavior closely related with Americans. Sometimes we buy products made from the USA, right? So we try to absorb the things that is outside the Philippines. So we try to become one with them. We try to embrace how they dress, how they behave because of the influence of globalization. We become one. How we dress, how we behave, our culture, how we do things. Okay? Number two is the economic factor. So how do we become one? When you talk about economic, we become a free market. We are open to all. We do business with one another, right? Americans can do business here. The Filipino people can also do business there. So that is a free market. When you talk about economic factors, the second economic factors that we become one is the capitalism. Capitalism, we can create our own business. We can do something for ourselves, like any businesses that we wanted to engage ourselves in. So we become a private owner. Okay, the third one is because of global economic crisis. Okay, one of the economic factor that really influences us is the global economic crisis. Okay, so because of the pandemic, as what you can see now, a lot of businesses are closing down. A lot of businesses are really struggling because of the pandemic, and we are all affected by it. We become one with it. So a lot of businesses worldwide are really closing because of the impact of the pandemic. So we become one with in terms of economic factors. The third one is the political orientation. So when you talk about political orientations, sometimes we are influenced by others' political views. We become similar, we follow them. This is the emergence of similar models of governance in the world. So also follow it as much as we can kung ganahan ta. Okay, because we are trying to become like them. We are also trying to do our best to do benchmark or to practice some good practices and try to absorb it here, because as much as possible we are trying to be similar, to be successful like them. Okay, so the second theory that we are going to support the idea of globalization is the heterogeneity. So when you talk about heterogeneity, it is the quality of being diverse in cultural, political, social, and economic aspect. So this is a different thing from the homogeneity, because the homo, we become similar to one another. But the heterogeneity is we become diverse when it comes to cultural, political, social, and economic aspect. Okay? So from the word of globalization. So what do you mean by metaphors of globalization? So we will use some figure of speech the metaphors of globalization. Globalization is defined as being solid. What do you mean by solid? Solid, when you talk about globalization, is we are trying to fall. We are, sometimes we become very hard over time. We become very strong. When you talk about globalization, the way we do things, the way we perceive things, right? Because of the influence of another country, we become so solid with ourselves. We become so solid on how we believe, our belief, our culture, our practices. And that is the first metaphor of globalization. We try to connect it to is solid. And the second one is because of globalization, we become liquid. So what do you mean by being liquid? Liquid is we can travel around the globe. We can travel, we can migrate to another country, from this country to another country. So we are very liquid. People, things, information, very liquid. We can learn things, we can absorb things, so we can study here, online. So that is very diverse. We can do everything possible. Even if you are not allowed to travel, you can still study, right? Because of the online class. Gas. So in the global era, people, objects, information, and phrases are incredibly mobile. So gaseousness, meaning we are very mobile. We can move anywhere. We can transfer from one place to another place. People, object, things, information are very fast. So in the global era, we are a very mobile person. We don't stay here, just here. We also have the chance to go out or to travel or to embrace another things because of the influence of globalization. So the fourth one is the flows. Okay, so people, object, things, information, plans are moving more freely. It's flowing. We go with the flow. So that's the idea of the metaphor of globalization. Things are moving freely. Things are moving freely. It's we can do business anywhere. So there is no restriction. It is very open. It's flowing. The opportunities are flowing. Good things are flowing. So that is the idea of globalization. So we have the four metaphors of globalization. It's solid, liquid, gaseousness, and flows. It's flowing. Okay, so how about the dynamics of local and global culture? So as we all know that culture is characterized by how we live our lives daily. I have my own culture, you also have your own culture. So we might have different culture, but the idea of culture is it really depends on how we live our lives daily and how we perceive our lives daily in a particular plan or a period. So when you talk about local culture, is anything we build. It is anything we build as part of our lives. So local culture, it is your own belief. Local culture is how you live your life, and that is your local culture. And nobody can take that away from you, or nobody can pull that away from you, because it is your own culture. It is your belief. It is your practices that you build within yourselves. Okay, it is your knowledge about your everyday lives. That is your local culture. The second is the global culture. So what do you mean by global culture? Global culture is the idea that we have our own shared experiences, we have norms, ideas that unite people globally. So although we are living in a different country, we have different perspective, but we also have some shared experiences, norms, or ideas that unite us as one. Okay? Because of the transmission of ideas, meanings, and values around the world, sometimes our culture has also been changing all over time. That's why we have a lot of shared experiences, norms, ideas because of global culture. But still, you also have your remaining local culture because that is you. Nobody can take that away from you. So there are three perspectives on global cultures. We have this one, cultural hybridization. So when you talk about perspective, there are three how we see global culture. Cultural hybridization. So when you talk about hybridization, it is the fusion. It is the fusion of elements from various culture. It is the integration of the different culture as one. That's why it is hybridization. So for example, you are from the Philippines and you transferred to another country. There is already a cultural hybridization because there is a fusion of elements from various cultures. You are trying to embrace another culture, trying to absorb it to yourself, and that's how you become the idea of cultural hybridization. You are trying to absorb different cultures, right? The second is cultural differentialism. Okay, cultural differentialism, we are different, we have different culture, and sometimes our culture really differs from one another. Okay, so that's why we can't judge them that my culture is the right culture and your culture is not the right culture. So we can't tell that to anyone because we have different perspective about what is culture. We have different perspective of global culture, how you see things, how you view things, and how you perceive your lives every day, and that's influences our culture. Okay, the third one is the cultural convergence. So what do you mean by cultural convergence? It is growing cultural similarities. It is growing cultural similarities, not including but not limited to values, consumers, friends, and media. Meaning, cultural convergence, there is a growing cultural similarities. We become similar to one another because of the influence of global culture. Sometimes our culture before anam-anam siya kawala because of global culture. But still, your local culture will always be there for you. And sometimes there are people who try to remain with their own local culture. So when you talk about culture, we shouldn't judge one another despite of our differences, our perspective of culture, because we are living in a different perspective. We're also living in a different era. So sometimes we just need to respect our culture, how we view the idea of globalization, because that's really how life things works. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching. And I really hope that you are learning from all of the videos that I've posted. So I am really trying to catch up with you guys. Okay, this is our lesson 1 in the subject of the contemporary world. So I really hope that you will subscribe to my channel if you are interested to get to know more of all my discussions. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again for my next video vlog. Thank you and God bless.